Hello, good morning. Welcome to Industry Week 2021, the 15th year of Confetti Industry Week. It's the final day. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. I'm Alison Whitlock. I'm Head of Student Talent Development here at Confetti, and I manage all of the student opportunities with my colleagues in education. This is a Do It For Real music panel, which is great. I love doing the Do It For Real panels. They're really good fun because they're an opportunity for us to invite back some of Confetti's top graduates who are all working in the industry now. We get to listen to their stories, get to hear what they're doing now, and you get an opportunity to ask them lots of great questions, which I hope you're going to do using the Q&A function this morning in this chat. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our fabulous panel this morning from various parts of our music courses in the past. So if I could just introduce you to Aaron, George and Kurt, if you could just tell us your full names, what you studied at Confetti, when you graduated, if you can remember, and more importantly, what you're doing now. Aaron, over to you.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I studied live and technical events up until 2018, and I'm now currently employed by Curve Theatre as a lighting technician in Leicester.
Welcome, Aaron. Lovely to have you here this morning. George, over to you.
Hello, I'm George Patchett. I should mention I'm Aaron's brother, so if it seems like we know each other quite well, we kind of do. I studied music technology between 2014 and 2015 when I graduated from Confetti. I then went and did a third year at De Montfort University to top that up to a BSc in sound and recording technology. And that finished in 2016, and currently I'm the Deputy Production Manager for ProMod Esport, a broadcast production services company specialising in esports.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you, George. Welcome. This is your second Do It For Real panel of the week, isn't it? Because you actually did you're a games panellist as well, because you've crossed over from a music technology degree into esports, which is a really interesting journey. Hope you can tell us more about that shortly. Finally, last but definitely not least, to Kurt. Kurt, welcome this morning. Could you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kurt. I'm a recording engineer working around a few studios in London now, and I finished at Confetti in, we think, about 2008. I studied music technology at the time.
Brilliant, thank you, welcome. And you're a platinum winning music producer, is that right? Have I got that right?
Apparently so, yeah.
Congratulations. Do you want to just mention that? I'm going to mention it for you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I recorded a single with H and AJ Tracy last year that debuted at number 3 and went platinum just before Christmas.
Wow.
In fact, I'm expecting the disc next week, which is very nice.
Oh my goodness, congratulations to you. That is an amazing achievement. Big round of applause. How did that feel? How did that feel when you heard that you got that?
Quite surreal. It was, to be fair, it was weird the first time. So it was in lockdown. We found out it had gone silver, which I've not experienced before. So that was quite a surreal feeling. And I remember saying to my sister, it was really cool that I was getting that disc, and that was, you know, an honour, to be fair. It'd likely go gold, you know, potentially next year with how the sales were going. Literally within a month, it had gone gold again, and then and then platinum before Christmas. So yeah, really, really strange feeling. I mean, I only played a small part in it, recording bits, but fingers crossed, it's opened a few doors to things, you know, for the new year, which is nice.
Have you seen anything already happen as a result of that? Has
I've landed a couple of gigs because of having that on my CV now, and I find that more people are getting in touch with me through email and socials and things, because of that, which is it's a nice thing. It's nice to have that recognition and to know that I am still looking for work. That's the way it is, you know, being a freelancer. But it's nice to know that there is the odd bit that's coming my way without me having to go searching for it.
without having to do the chase. Well, long may that rain.
Yeah.
I hope things pick up and it gathers
Fingers crossed,
over the next few weeks, months, etc. So, just coming back to the panel subject and just your time at Confetti, I'd like to focus on that for a couple of minutes. So, what made you choose Confetti, do you think? I'll ask Aaron that question first.
Oh, well, I was a bit of a sheep, really, because my brother George was already at Confetti and doing, obviously, the music tech course. And I was doing a performance course at college, just a BTEC performance course. But in the last year of that, I sort of ended up I was spending more time with the technicians than I was with the actual performers. So I thought, well, let's go and have a look at Confetti, see what they're all about. And it was I think your first year you were doing the degree course I think it was the second year actually of the degree course of Live and Tech. So yeah, I spoke to Rob Baldock, and that was it. We were away from there.
The Rob Baldock connection.
Yeah. She got shown a slideshow of Splendour, and that was it.
You were like that. I'm there. I want a slice of the Splendour action.
Yeah.
Right. Good stuff. What about you, George? What drew you to Confetti? You were the pioneer in the Patchett family, weren't you? The Confetti pioneer.
Yeah, I guess I'll wear that badge proudly. No, I went to attempt my A-levels in Lincoln. Keyword there is attempt. And there I kind of discovered that written work wasn't really for me, or at least not in the style that it is for A-levels. At the time, I was also quite heavily involved in community radio, which I'd done since my work experience as well. So kind of through that avenue, I realized I was kind of looking for something in music and sound that's a bit more technical. And Confetti right off the bat had that like front page, we do everything tech. Went and had a look round, and I saw a scene very similar to what is behind you, Alison. A big sound desk, lots of technical, lots of things to plug in, and I loved that. It sold it to me immediately.
It's super impressive, isn't it? Super impressive. Kurt, what about you? What drew you to Confetti?
At the time, I mean, we're going back a while. I left school in 2006, so at the time the music courses were very different at school, and it was all pretty much theory based. And if we wanted to do anything recording wise, we had to learn how to do it ourselves. So I got really into it over the last couple of years at school, and the only place that offered anything within that realm was Confetti. And walking through the doors, and like George says, seeing the gear and being in a room was something that I'd never experienced before. I was just drawn in straight away, and then I've never looked back.
Well, it's great to hear. I hear this time after time. It's like the facilities are amazing. It's so impressive. It's great. It's really nice to hear. And look at them now, just getting better and better. It's amazing. Anyway, a question about Confetti and how did Confetti support your career decisions during and directly after you left? Question back to, I'm going to ask George this time. I'm going to ask you first, George.
So Confetti was super supportive of any decisions that were taken regarding my career. It was kind of the opinion that if you had an opportunity come through, and there was two ways they could come through, either directly through Confetti itself, or you could get contacted externally. And what I found was it didn't matter where that opportunity came from. The support was there to go and do that opportunity, even if in the unlikely event it conflicted with a lesson or a session. I found that the teachers would often rather us go and take the opportunity and get that experience than sitting in the lesson. Obviously, if it can be shifted around, that's always preferable, but that was super supportive and really great.
Yeah, you did an awful lot of Knots TV, didn't you? An awful lot of Knots TV. So you did the live sound on the shows, didn't you? The broadcast sound.
So I did a lot of recording for the Channel 8 debate, and then later on moved on to doing live audio engineering in the summer.
And do you think that that sort of like paved the way for what you're doing now a little bit, George?
Absolutely. I mean, that helped me basically. I'll talk about it later, but fall into my first job with almost no hurdles, I would say, because of that skill set that I gained engineering live and taking those opportunities.
Save that story. Save
I
that
shall.
story for
I
a couple
shall.
of minutes. We're not there yet. Aaron, what about you? How do you feel Confetti supported your career decisions during and after?
Yeah, really well. Well, I just I kept escaping really to go and do quite extensive show runs at Curve, and yeah, they were very, very supportive in me doing that. Obviously, if I did the work, they allowed me to sort of go away and do these things, because it was well, industry experience, which I like to think the Live and Tech course quite solely focuses on. A lot of real world experience, or do it for real, as you guys say.
We call it do it for real. Do it for real. Differ. I say differ. Differ. What did that look like then? You say you escaped, but how long did you escape for, and how regularly did you escape for? Because it sounds almost like you were doing, it was a crossover between your studies and real work experience.
He was basically staying full time at my flat.
I was on George's sofa quite a lot.
Oh, brothers, eh?
No, well, the longest runs I did was Panto, because they're always quite long. So I went away for about a month and a half at a time.
Wow.
Over the Christmas period. But stuff at Kerr could have been about 1 or 2 weeks. I'd probably go away for. So it was never extensive periods, but. Yeah.
And as long as you were able to keep up your coursework, everyone was cool with that, yeah?
Yeah, it was fine. And even like my boss at Curve supported it massively. He always said if he wanted him to sort of write anything up or let me sort of do anything through university, he'd let me do that. So even they were really supportive in the fact that I was a student.
That's awesome. What about you, Kurt? How did Confetti support you?
I think at the time when I was getting towards the end of my course, I was looking at going to uni, and at the time Confetti was with De Montfort, and the course was more, I guess it was more technical based than creative at the time, and I was very much of the idea that I want to go down the creative angle, so there was a lot of support around that, at the time wanting me to go forward for De Montfort, but at the same time, appreciating the fact that I wanted to go on this creative idea and look at other possibilities. And then afterwards, I've stayed in touch with Rob Baldock, just checking in whenever I've had a change in whatever I've been doing, just sort of checking in, just saying, this is what I'm doing now, thanks. And it's
that regular check-in. That's what it's all about with all of your contacts. I think it's good to stay in touch, because you never know when you might need that person or come back, or there might be a new opportunity that comes up, eh? So just moving on, what's your best memory of Confetti, or the most valuable thing that you learnt? I'll ask Kurt that question first.
It's probably the most embarrassing at Confetti as well, to be fair.
Excellent.
We had a mix assessment. If I remember, we'd recorded a song. It was a cover of Design for Life by Manic Street Preachers, and we basically had to go off, and we had a few hours to mix this track, and I spent the first 20 minutes just not getting any audio at all from the desk, and it was literally, I'd just not turn the volume up, which was ridiculous. I still do it now, to be fair. You can have everything set up and ready to go, and then no volume, and it's literally you've hit the dim switch. But on that assessment, Rob actually came in and was amazed at the string sound, and was asking how it got to that state, which was for me at the time, I thought, right, that's really cool. I've managed to do something, and I feel good about it. And that was probably the one that sticks in my mind.
Yeah, that's great. George, what about you?
For me, it's got to be Industry Week every time.
Yeah.
This period of getting professionals in the industry in who have gone out and done it, it is such a phenomenal opportunity. And I actually took took part and demonstrated something as a student at one of the industry weeks. I had an idea of something to do with sound desk. Just recently bought the X32 sound desk, I think, and I had a couple of ideas with it. And I said, can I borrow the sound desk? Thinking there's no way. There's no way they'll let me borrow a whole sound desk. And they went, yeah, here you go. What? I could just have the whole thing. Yeah, bring it back. Great. Okay. So yeah, that was pretty awesome.
That's a great story. That's a really great story. I can't remember what you said for the other panel. Actually, anyway, we'll
might have been something completely different.
Yes, it might have been something completely different. Anyway, but it's a great story. Was it big? Where did you take it?
It was actually in Electric Mayhem.
Wow.
And it was maybe an eighth of the size of the Neve desk that I'm not sure if it is still in Electric Mayhem or not, actually. You might have gotten rid of it. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy to see a relatively small sound desk compared to the OG Neve that was there.
Coming on to Aaron, finally. What's your best memory or most valuable thing you learned?
For me, I think it was always the off-site stuff we did, always the events we did, because it was just sort of the fact that we had almost free reign of sort of the event. Obviously, the tutors were there, but we could set up the equipment, we operated it, we did the long hours and things. So yeah, that was the best for me because it worked, felt the most real, if that makes sense. It was a lot of fun. You mentioned Splendor earlier. Did you do, how many Splendors did you work on? Well, yeah, 2 in the end. I think the only thing that stopped me from doing the 3rd was my actual graduation ceremony.
Oh, got in the way.
It did. Oh. I was very close to driving straight down afterwards and doing the loadout, but
that would have been dedication in the extreme. Either missing your graduation for Splendor to work at
there's something about being in the back of a lorry that you can't get enough of.
That is definite dedication. So I want to move on now to the nuts and bolts of these panels, which is after Confetti. So you graduated, you left. What happened next? How many jobs did you apply for? What did you get a lot of rejection letters? How did it work for you? What happened after Confetti? So, Kurt, I'm going to ask you first.
I went and I studied in London for a while, but couldn't afford to stay in London, so I ended up coming back, finishing my degree at Nottingham Trent, and then eventually doing a master's in Leeds. And then when I moved back down here in about 2015, and at the time, I didn't have a job, I'd set aside 3 months where I was just coming down and I was going to look for work in what I wanted to do. And you kind of realise quite quickly that jobs don't exist in recording studios, unless you're looking at marketing or A&R or admin, there aren't specific jobs, for engineers or assistants. So yeah, there was a lot of emails, a lot of knocking on doors, handing out CVs, and I eventually got a job in post-production as a runner, and that kind of just gave me the time to. The hours weren't great, we'd start at 8 a.m, you'd be there till sometimes 11 at night, and you'd be expected to be back in, for 8 a.m. Monday to Friday. But when I could, I was, putting together a show reel and getting stuff out to the studios, and then working in an industry close to the industry that I wanted to be in, that was close enough, to eventually get me in.
So you were a runner at a post house. So what do you? And you were in earlier. I know that well. I used to work in post production myself, and I know that we've had this chat offline earlier about stomping the same ground in Soho and the different facilities houses. So what were you doing as part of your running job that first?
It was literally, it's your standard, there's the teas, coffees, fetching food for clients. We would do it was mainly voiceovers for adverts that I was doing initially. So we'd have people come in, like say Joanna Lumley or Idris Elba, those types of people, and you're having to look after them for the day, which is quite nice to be in, but at the same time quite high pressured.
Yeah.
And eventually I moved up to head runner, so I was doing more in the studios, actually assisting with the voiceover parts, until the way things work in Soho, I had a chat with one of the engineers there, and the post houses kind of see Soho as your playground. So rather than you working up within one company, you kind of move up a position, move on to another company, move up to that position, and then move on again. And you kind of get to where you want to go quicker that way. So I moved up to head runner, and then a job came up that was more hands-on at a place across the road. So I ended up taking that job and staying there for a couple of years, whilst I built this show reel to get into the studios.
And were you nipping in when the studios were shut, and then getting your show reel up, sort of thing? Were you getting it up to speed and where you wanted it to be?
Yeah. So there was this idea that if you got in with the right people, then you were kind of allowed to use things, rooms on the side, as long as there were no clients around. So yeah, when I was finalising things, I'd go in, spend an hour or two just tweaking the odd bit. But yeah, it helped. As long as you've got people on side and you've got the option to use those facilities, then yeah, it definitely helped.
I mean, time is money in Soho facilities, as it is everywhere. It's studio time cost, so it's quite. They're busy all the time, aren't they? So that downtime is really limited, and it's probably in the middle of the night that you were doing a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So, George, what about you? What happened after Confetti?
My story is a very fortunate one, I would say. So I left Confetti and went straight to, at the time, it was De Montfort University to do that top-up year. And about half a year into the course, I picked up some freelance work with, at the time, a very, very small company called ESL UK. Had just started doing some sort of sound engineering for their broadcasts on the side. And then it came closer to graduation day, and I sort of finishing the last few bits of coursework and exams. And they called me into a meeting and said, we'd like to offer you a job here. When would you like to start? And I said, well, I've got to finish uni first and go to graduation and all that. So in a couple of weeks. And then they said, okay, what day do you finish university? I see. So that's that. I was very, very fortunate in the sense of there certainly wasn't a very formal interview process. I got that job based on showcasing what I learned at Confetti on an actual sound desk, on an actual broadcast, and also being able to show past evidence of work that I've done, aka TV, and those kinds of things. I actually asked the production manager afterwards, approximately how many applicants were there, what was I up against? And he said there was something like 17 applicants, and out of all of them, I was top 2 just because I'd had that experience and I'd gone and done that. So I was incredibly fortunate, and it's definitely not like that for the majority of people.
But what I'm hearing is that, similar to your brother, and I'll come to you in a moment, Aaron, but you were doing a lot of stuff already, weren't you, whilst you were still studying? And there was that crossover between working part-time on what you planned to do and finishing your degree. So
absolutely. I mean, that's a cracking bit of advice in general, is don't wait until you graduate to go and do stuff and contact people. You should be contacting people now so that you can hit the ground running when you do graduate.
Because actually you're going to have to do that for the rest of your working life. You're constantly going to have to keep your contacts renewed and keep in touch with the ones that you want to work with and build that network out. Networking is just talking to people and keeping in touch, isn't it? I've yet. Obviously, every story is different, but Aaron, what about you? What happened after Confetti? So you were already working as well, from the sound of things, weren't you?
Yeah, it is very similar to George. In fact, I'd already been sleeping on my brother's sofa for a year while I was at uni, going to Curve. So I'd already been there for 2 years. So sort of, I finished in. I finished writing my dissertation in March, and then I think in May the job came up. So obviously I hadn't actually graduated yet. And I got the job in June. Yeah, I think I got the job in June. So I had to book holiday off to to go to my graduation, which was quite entertaining. But yeah, I was very lucky. It was pretty much straight out. I got a few weeks off, and I was very lucky to do that.
Brilliant. We've got loads and loads of questions coming in already. Thanks, guys. This is brilliant. I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions, really, before we move on to some of these student questions. I just want to talk about rejection and how you deal with rejection letters. It doesn't sound like you've had a lot of rejection, Patchett brothers, actually. Maybe a little bit, I don't know. So have you had any rejections? I mean, in relation to work. Have you had any rejections, and how do you cope with that? How do you remain resilient and positive, particularly at the moment during COVID? How's that all panning out? Question 2, Kurt.
I think in regards to COVID in particular, I think there's been a lot of with the restrictions. There's been a lot of people been let go in studios. So whether it's the assistants, runners, reception, there's been a lot of changes. I think me being freelance, I've seen a dip in my work for definite, but it's just a case of keeping at it and not feeling too downhearted, because everyone's in the same position at the minute. And there are those times where you are feeling, you start looking at the job sites and seeing what's around. But at the end of the day, things are starting to go back to normal in the studios, and fingers crossed, the work will pick up and things will go back to normal. But I think, like I say, seeing people get let go, it's I think there's going to be some changes within the studio environments going forward. So there might be less jobs, but it's just keeping at it, keeping networking, and not letting yourself get too disheartened, because, like I say, everyone's in the same position. Talk to one another, and see, I've got a friend who's doing this, look at what they're doing, and try and follow that avenue. It's just
tough, isn't it?
It's difficult at the minute. Yeah.
Do you see, have you had to diversify or focus on one particular type of work in the last 12 months?
I've started doing mastering, which isn't something that I'd looked into. Well, I've done the odd bit before, but it's not something I'd wanted to do initially. And I just kind of fell on it last summer. And then through word of mouth, I've been getting the odd bit that I've been able to do from home, which is great. It makes a difference when you've not got all the late nights at the studios. And it's something I'd like to continue going forward, if that's a possibility, because I do get to work on my own time and, get up, roll out of bed, sit at the computer, do my bit and finish at a reasonable time, have the rest of the day. And it's, for me, it's that work-life balance.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I know people that have, fallen into, they've gone into podcasts, for example. They're recording engineers that have gone mainly into editing podcasts or voiceover work. Everyone's trying to find something different to keep an income whilst we're waiting for things to sort of get back to normal. And
I think I'm hoping, for everybody's sake, that they do. Do you see that happening? Do you see that happening soon? Is it? It's crystal ball gazing, isn't it? Really. I think, I feel like the studios kind of fall into the hospitality sector. So at the minute,
some of the smaller studios have closed because they can't accommodate 6 people in a room. And the bigger studios are trying to limit it to 6 people in the room, including, engineer, assistant. So pretty much you can only get 3 or 4 clients in there. As the restrictions lift and people can start bringing, whoever they need to the studio, then fingers crossed, things will start going back to normal.
Yeah.
I see that there are the bookings at the bigger studios at the minute, and they are getting used. But it's the smaller studios, I think, that are suffering because they, like I say, they can't have 6 people in a small space.
Yeah.
And I did a few sessions when the smaller studios were open around just before the second lockdown.
Yeah.
And it was literally me and the artist. And it works great, but it's nice if you can, if you can have the producer in the room or someone, a vocal producer, someone who knows a bit more than me just saying, oh yeah, that was great. Maybe try it this way. I haven't got the bottle to be telling people, yeah, you need to do it this way if it's not my song. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
Well, fingers crossed things will start to open up and ease up for everybody. George, have you, rejection wise, how have you coped, or how have you sustained momentum? Because just to put this talk in context, you basically, ProMod Esports is based in Leicester, but you are currently zooming in from Cologne in Germany, aren't you? So can you tell us a little bit about that and how things have changed for you in the last 12 months?
Yeah, so it's been a bit weird because a lot of broadcast studios are all sort of hardware based, and it's all very bespoke hardware in the same sense that sound desks are, except I manage the video side, the graphics side of things as well. So kind of in March time when the first lockdown happened, and I more or less just joined ProMod maybe 2 weeks before, so I was still very much finding my feet in the job. And my boss came to me and said, right, we're in lockdown. We still need to make money as a company. How are we going to produce shows with no people in the studio? And I said, that's a very good question. And that was quite a challenge for my first 2 weeks in office, is taking these, these weren't small studios either. These were maybe 30-meter square spaces that we would have talent hosting in. We would have whole galleries, and we now had to take that completely online. You can't take stuff like that online. You can't take a sound desk and put it online. That's not how any of that works. So it was quite an interesting challenge. We ended up still using the studio, but having people remotely control it. So we've had myself out here in Germany remotely controlling all this hardware, people all over the country, which brings its own challenges, especially relying on people's home internet connections and things. So yeah, very, very strange world to be dropped into.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just got to stop a minute because I've just seen in the chat, has anyone got any questions for Aaron's dog? Aaron, you've got a dog in the house. Come on now, show us your dog. What's the name of your dog, please? Oh
Eddie,
my God.
He's a 3-year-old cockapoo.
Oh, cockapoo.
And he loves to lick me.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got a pretty friendly tongue.
Well, there we are. If you have got any questions for Aaron, or indeed for his dog, what was the dog's name again? Sorry? Eddie the dog. Then please get them down in Q&A. We'll try and ask the dog. I am actually going to go use that as a beautiful segue. Actually, I want to ask you, Aaron, if you don't mind, or Eddie, what you've been doing. Obviously not so much in terms of rejection, but what you've been doing for the last 12 months, because obviously Curve is a theatre. It went into lockdown. You've really been diversifying, haven't you?
Oh yeah. Well, I think pretty much a few weeks after we closed, I was on the phone to my mate who runs a gardening business, and yeah, I just offered to give him a pair of hands. I didn't even expect for him to pay me. I just thought, oh, this will be something to keep me busy and get outside the flat. then yeah, so we started doing loads and loads of work over summer. We actually got really busy doing a wide range of different jobs in all over Leicester in people's gardens, which was quite strange. But yeah, that was quite good. It sort of topped up my income because I was on the furlough wage. It was nice to get the added, sort of make up the 20% myself through this gardening work. And I learned loads that I never thought I'd learn, like how to turf and things.
All valuable skills that you, but I mean, it's all about survival, isn't it? Ultimately, it's all
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And keeping busy as much as anything. So at least you've got another whole different skill to fall back on now, haven't you? If you need to. But you're on flexi furlough now, aren't you? Are you on flexi furlough?
Yeah, currently on flexi furlough. So we try and do as many shows sort of as we can within reason. Obviously, in terms of theatre, to be able to produce a show, you need to hold all the rights, not only to have the scripts and perform the show, but you need separate rights to then film and stream the show.
Right.
So it takes quite a long period of time to get all these rights in place. Then obviously they've got to cast all the cast and book all the crew and sort of get their design in their head and sort of from the head onto the stage. So yeah, it's quite a long process, but we've been lucky enough to stream two different shows during the sort of lockdown periods, which is quite good. And they've actually been reasonably successful and got quite good reviews, which is really nice. Because we're lucky enough, our director, we're lucky enough to have a very, very good and creative director. So he's come up with some absolutely fantastic ideas and how to make a show which is going to be filmed interesting when you're not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there was no set or anything. It was just actors and cameras, basically.
Yeah.
So how do you make that interesting? What can you do to add a dynamic to that? So yeah, it was a lot of good fun to do that.
It's all about adaptation at the moment, isn't it? And diversification. Yeah. I'm going to go to some questions now because I've got loads of them to get through. And Govinda is on fire at the moment. He's asked loads of questions. But anyway, so how soon after the course did you get paid music-related jobs? I'm guessing that's a question to Kurt.
Ooh. After finishing uni, so if I finished overall in 2015, would have been summer. I moved into post-production the following summer, so roughly about a year. But between that time, I was always doing freelance work, whether it was recording bands in practice rooms or offering to record to mix bands for free or cheap, just to sort of keep my showreel building. But yeah, I think as far as the post-production goes, a year, 3 years until I got into the actual recording studios.
So there actually, again, there's like different circles, one thing taking over from another.
Yeah, it's kind of one to another, until you get to,
Yeah. Do you feel that Confetti taught you a lot about the role you are doing, or do you feel it was different once you started? I think that's from Govinda again, and I guess to Kurt to begin with.
I think there's, to a certain degree, there's a hell of a lot that you learn in education. There's a lot that I use now that I learned in education. But it's almost like that, when you're learning to drive and you don't really learn to drive until you've passed your test. It's when you're in a real world situation, and especially working with the labels, when you're working on something, if you're only booked for the day, the label wants that project to finish, to sound as finished as possible by the end of the session. So you're working ridiculously fast and sending everything they need with it sounding like a finished product before it goes on to the next person, be it the mixer or back to the producer. So you kind of learn a lot on the job as well, more about your timekeeping than anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got one from Jack Perkins. Again, it's for you, Kurt. I'm sorry about this, Patchett. I will come to you, I'm sure, any minute now. I'm just reading down the questions. Did you feel you specialised in any one area of your course, for example, mixing? And did that shape your decision to find a specific job role after studying, or did you just look for anything?
I always wanted to go into production. That was my idea from literally when I was at Confetti right through to the Masters in Leeds. I always wanted to do production. I fell into post-production because that's where the jobs were at the time. And you know, making that move into becoming an engineer, this is kind of always where I've wanted to be. Just, you know, with maybe a bit more work if COVID hadn't happened. But yeah, this was always the end goal.
This isn't the Kurt Martinez show, but I do have another question from Govinda, and it's a good one. It is a good one. So, Kurt, how did you get to work on that platinum single? How did that come about?
I freelanced between a few studios, SARM being one of them, and the guys were booked into SARM. I got a phone call asking if I was available to make it for a session that evening for H and AJ Tracy, which you don't say no to two names like that. So yeah, I showed up. I think the whole session was probably only about maybe 5 or 6 hours in total. And yeah, that was it. It was literally just the fact that I work at SARM regular, and I was the lucky one to get the phone call to be picked to go and do that project.
So take the call, for God's sake, take the call.
Yeah.
Don't be doing anything else. Be available. Just say yes.
That is 100%. It's it's this idea that you don't say no. You know, if someone says, "Oh, can you do this for me?" Like I was saying with the mastering thing, back in summer, I got asked if I could master something. Yeah. It needed remastering, and they said, "Can you get it to sound like the original?" And at the time I was like, yeah, sure. And then you kind of worry about it after. So it's exactly that. It's say yes and don't worry about it.
Yeah. Just don't overthink it. Just do it. We say this to students. Some of them are like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't go on location. Oh, it's tomorrow morning. It's like, go and do it. Don't overthink it. Because you never know where it might lead. So I like this question. And a similar one came up the other day. Did you do any work that wasn't industry-based before you got the work you have now? It's those other jobs that haven't got any industry connection. Did any of you do any of those? This is a question to anyone, whoever'd like to take this. I can see you're smiling away. So did you do that job?
I did. I was a grocery assistant at Tesco for years. Moved to tech support at Tesco because it was more techy. And then I went to work at Apple for a few years at Sheffield. And then when I was in Leeds, I moved to the Leeds store and I was doing the one-to-one training and group training, which was exactly what you were just saying about the sort of panicking about doing things. Most mornings we go in and not know, I'd be given something on, I don't know, Final Cut, for example, and I don't know a great deal about Final Cut at all, but I have half an hour to read up on something and then go and lead a group presentation on how to use Final Cut. And I've had some weird jobs.
Squeaky bum time, but it's like, ooh, just go and do it. And then you've got new skills to your bow, haven't you? I can see Aaron.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Aaron did warn us that he was expecting a delivery this morning, and I think that the doorbell might have just gone. But anyway, maybe he'll come back with another dog. I don't know. George, have you ever had any of those other jobs?
I mean, I did do shelf stacking at Morrison's on work experience before I got into the radio stuff. But I think I'm kind of doing, I mean, it is, of course, still related a little bit, but I'm currently in one of those jobs now, I think, where I'm still doing bits of sound and planning sound. However, like I'm now having to deal with video and graphic, which is like a completely different set of standards and way of working. So yeah, it's quite different to just doing sound. I was very much in my comfort zone with sound because I've done it for years and knew my stuff very well. Even going quite deep into specialising in intercom systems. So I can also go and deploy large-scale intercom systems at large events. Not quite Olympic size, but I can certainly specialise at that level. So it kind of pulled me away a little bit doing what I do now. Not that that's a bad thing because I now get to learn things like video, graphics, and all those things as well. So it's not a bad thing, absolutely.
Thank you. Aaron. Hello. Hello. Did you do any other jobs other than those that are focused on your industry now along the way?
Other than the gardening recently, not really. I was quite lucky. When I was younger, I had things like I was a waiter for a bit. I worked on a bar for a bit. I did a paper round when I was really young, but that was way before university.
You pretty much got on those train tracks early and you stuck on them, apart from the gardening.
Yeah, absolutely. I met some very good people in the theatre industry in Lincoln who seemed to just push me in a direction, which was quite nice. And
that's great.
And if I didn't have work in the theatre, I'd often just scrounge work off George.
Keep it in the family.
Do you end up stacking barriers at 4 a.m. in the rain or something one day?
Oh, I've done some. It's sort of the. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because Andy Atkin, as you'll probably know, one of the Live in Tech tutors, has a business, which I can't remember specifically what they do, but I ended up putting up marquees and barriers and things.
Yeah, they set up all the music festival infrastructure, basically. That's what it is. So that's Andy.
Almost related, but
yeah, absolutely. I've got a question from Daniel. This is a good one. Thanks, Daniel. After a level 3 course, is it better to go to uni or try going straight to industry? What are your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
I would say you need to assess where you're at in terms of your network. So if your network isn't as expanded and not as interconnected, I would probably veer towards going to university. But if your network is incredibly well connected, you're communicating with them regularly, you're even getting offers of work from them, it may be worth going down the work. But I always find, and I've heard from a lot of people, it's more difficult to go back to university once you've been in the industry for some time. So I think you need to make that assessment of like how well you could survive in the industry currently. Because if you're not talking to people, if you're not getting offers through, if people aren't excited or knowledgeable about you and what you do as a person, I would probably take that slightly safer route of going to university first. One of the freelancers I work with regularly has just chucked in his university course, which is quite a big decision for him. But he's getting more work than he is spending time at university. So he's made that assessment and made that decision that his work then outweighs what he's learning at university. And that's a very tough decision to make, and it's one that only you can really assess and make.
Thank you. Kurt, what about you? What do you think about that?
I'd say, again, it's assessing where you're at. I know people that have gone on to do university and then decided that it's not for them, stuck at it and finished, but rather than actually, put themselves to use on the course, they've used the facilities to record bands and start work essentially. And it's put them in a good position now, but they're just not too keen on the education side. Whereas then on my perspective, I don't think I would have got into post-production had I not had my degree or my master's, and that's paved the way for where I'm at now. So I mean, I for me, it was the right thing for other people, not so much. It depends on you as a person and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Aaron? Do you think you can do a level 3 and then out, or do you think you need to go to university?
Yeah, I suppose I kind of agree with Kurt and George. It's I think for some people it can be quite obvious when you can just go into work. Like even if you are at university, but you're getting so much work that you can't handle the workload at university, that's probably a sign that maybe you can leave or don't go in the first sort of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, just it's a lot about who you know. I'm sure everyone hears that all the time in the industry, but it's all about that, isn't it? If you have a lot of contacts, it's probably worth either looking around for some or messaging the ones you do have and constantly badgering them, saying, have you got anything going? Have you got anything going? Can I get involved in this? I'll do it for free, I promise. And
I think it's also worth highlighting as well that that's something that Confetti is really good at in general, and just going back to, like, if you are getting opportunities, Confetti will support you in taking those opportunities while doing the course. I wouldn't recommend throwing away the chance of university just to take on external work and opportunities, especially given that Confetti will quite openly teach you about how to manage yourself as a freelancer, which do not underestimate that, because it's quite a shock the first time the tax man comes to you and you don't know how to submit tax returns and things. That's quite a shock.
I still don't know.
It's it's a whole business side in itself, isn't it? It's managing yourself as a business. It's not a full-time job, but it's a huge part of freelancing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, if you don't know that, and you are, I mean, I'm one of these people that just procrastinate the things that I don't want to do. But if you procrastinate more serious things like tax and stuff, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble very, very quickly. So it's absolutely, don't underestimate what a university can teach you, especially one like Confetti that's in the industry.
This kind of links in with what we're just talking about. A great question from Anonymous. Advice for managing finances and savings in an unpredictable career. Kind of links in with the whole freelancing aspect of your worlds. You know, how do you manage all of that? Interestingly, on Monday, this cropped up as well. And it's like, you know, it can be a real struggle, particularly in the last 12 months with a lot of freelance work changing or drying up. How do you practically manage your finances? Open question to you guys.
I can take this. Oh, sorry, go on, Kurt.
Yeah, no, go for it, George. Go for it.
I was going to say, because I spent maybe 4 months freelance after I left ESL UK, and one of the key things that helped me was having a calendar of what work I've got on currently, doing the numbers on how much I would earn from that work, doing my expenses and profit and loss kind of thing, and then finding spots where my calendar was empty. And then for those spots where the calendar was empty, I would look at what companies are busy at the moment. You know, use Twitter, use LinkedIn, go on social media, find people who are doing things right now and potentially even looking for something, and be bold, be brave, contact them and say, hey, I do this. Have you got anything going? As Aaron mentioned earlier, badger them and harass them, not to a point where they wouldn't give you work, but you need to go out there and say, hey, I'm available on these dates if you need something doing, and I can do that for you. And then using that during the period I was freelance, I was able to fill those spots in my calendar. I appreciate it's a little bit different now with the COVID environment, but the way of getting work hasn't changed, and it will never change. No. So I would recommend strongly doing that.
This is all very valuable advice. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to add to that?
I'd like to add to George's point, and I think don't be afraid to pick up the phone and actually ring people, because these days people put messages to the back of their head so quickly these days that it almost goes unregarded, especially if you're not known. But if you ring someone, you never know, they might be doing the books while you've rang them, or they might be planning something, and they might just think, oh, actually, yeah, I did need a person to do this. Are you free next week or something?
I think it's really easy for us to hide behind any kind of text form of communication now, and it's actually really, really passive. And you know, I remember phone conversations now because they're such a rare thing, because we do everything on the internet, we do everything in text, and you know, it humanises the process so much more. I think when you do pick up the phone, I think it's a really good point, Aaron. Kurt, have you got anything you'd like to add into the advice?
I just, before I went freelance, I made sure that I'd put away a bit of savings, so I'd got a couple of months there before, you know, if anything happened, then you know my rent was covered. But same sort of thing. Every Friday morning I sit down, I send out my availability to the studios, reply to anyone I need to, follow up, you know, if there's anywhere that I think I might like to work at different studios, you know, I get in touch with them and just chase people up and try and make sure that things are coming in constantly. Before I got into the studios I'm in now, I'd do a thing where I'd email every month, and you know, and hope that I got a reply. If I didn't get a reply, I'd follow up, you know, the next month. And it's a slow process, but it kind of puts that you know, you're not emailing every week and annoying people essentially. It's but yeah, just making sure that things are coming in steadily.
It is. It's like you have to speculate to accumulate. So you are casting out loads of emails and contacts, and you know, speculative requests. And you know, what would you say the ratio is when you start out of how many emails you send out to those that stick and convert into actual jobs? What do you think that ratio is? I asked this question earlier in the week, and it's quite interesting, really. But what's your experience of that? How much do you send out to get back one job?
I think there's a hell of a lot. I mean, as the studios go, the big ones, say there's, let's say there's 15 to 20, for example, you probably get a reply from 3 or 4 initially. And then I think as time's gone on, you know, that might not, you get either work in, you know, 3 or 4 studios, but it puts you on their radar. And then as time's gone on, and I'm in with places like Psalm or Metropolis, as soon as you can mention that name or you've been working there, then someone will get back from somewhere else. Like, oh, actually, we might want you on these dates. So it's strange how things go once you've got something else on your CV.
And then suddenly the web starts to grow outwards and it gathers its own momentum. Can
I just add a quick +1 sort of example to that, and just highlight how important it is to reach out and just ask. So before Aaron and I got into our respective jobs, and it kind of links into what Aaron said about ringing. We went to the Curve Theatre, and we didn't really know much of how theatre worked at that point. Had a bit of an idea. I mean, Aaron certainly did, but we just asked, we have a technical tour of the theatre. Worst they can say is no, right? But they said yes, and they had a technician give us a full tour backstage. We got shown all of the really in-depth technical bits, and because we were being shown around by a technician, if we wanted to ask something technical, they could give us the answer, and all because we asked.
Do you know what?
You don't get if you don't ask.
That's a really good point. And you know what? People do like sharing their knowledge, experience and expertise with people, and they love it's a feel-good factor when people are impressed by that and are showing an interest in that side of things. I think that's really important, isn't it? It's like, go and pick their brains, just ask them a little question. Don't just go give us a job, just go, oh, can I ask you a little something about something or other? And before you know it, your face or the Patchett faces are probably imprinted on the minds of that technician forever now, because you showed an interest, you were genuinely engaged, and Aaron's working there now. So obviously it's paid off, hasn't it? It has worked. It humanises the approach. It humanises the approach.
They'll absolutely see that passion. If you've got the passion and drive to be there and be where you want to be, they will see that immediately. I mean, just asking in the first instance proves that you want to be somewhere and you want to get somewhere. And then following through with that, when you meet them in person or speak to them over the phone, they will hear that in your voice if you've got that passion and drive. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to move on because there's so many great questions that come in, and I want to give us a chance to get through as many as we can. So I'm guessing this one's for Kurt again. Is starting your own small studio a good route to an oversaturated market?
I tried and it didn't go to plan. I'll be honest, I don't know. I think if you've got the experience and you've built a name for yourself and you've got a reason for people to want to use your small studio for you as a person, then absolutely. But I think if you've not built up say that credit list, for example, first, or then I think it's going to be a much more difficult game, especially now.
Because it's a premises and you're responsible for that and for the rates for it and so much more about it. It's a gamble, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot more responsibility on you running that business than running you as a self-employed engineer, for example. And the fact that in my case, for example, I can go and work in any studio, which is great, work with whoever I'm put with, and it builds that up. And I'd love to have my own place at some point, but for me, it's I'm not in a position to have a go at that again yet, because you need to make sure that the clients are coming in, the work's coming in, and you can afford the rent and the gear before and to live.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of cost in it.
A lot of cost, a lot of responsibility, isn't it? Particularly at this time. Good question, though. Really good question. Here's another one, Kurt, for you. Sorry. Any pointers to online resources for improving as an engineer?
Pure mix with the masters, and produce like a pro. Dave Pensado's place. They're great. Pensado's place, they do weekly shows where they get different engineers on, different producers, and talk through things. I think each episode is about 40 minutes to an hour. I know a lot of engineers, when they've got downtime, just sit and watch videos on sessions and try and learn. And those are great places to watch things on online.
I mean,
Sorry, no, go on.
No, you said you don't know. Please, after you, Kurt.
I've toured with the idea that there's these things online where there's people that have been working in the industry for years talking about their tricks and tips, but there doesn't seem to be anything at the minute that's young engineers that are working in it or trying to get into it at the moment. And I kind of plotted an idea for a YouTube series to talk to new engineers or people that are new to the studios but working on things that you hear on the radio. And I'd love to pursue that eventually, and get some, I know guys that have worked on records and they're getting work, but they're not known names, and it's great to hear how they got into it. And it's more of a real world thing than when you've got these big names like Chris Lord-Alge, for example, who it's great that he can do what he does, but I'd love to see newer people and how they're doing it and how they're learning from those sort of things.
Yeah, well, but maybe you've identified a gap in the market, because certainly online learning resources and training is such a huge area now. Everyone Googles the answer, don't they? Basically, they Google how to do stuff. So, and
absolutely
such a valuable resource. There's so much training material out there. Do you find that's how you? Sorry.
I was going to say, could I just add a couple to Kurt's list of resources?
Of course.
Sound on sound, like keep up with your news as well, and look out for new products coming out and do a bit of research on them, because you may find them in the next studio that you walk into. I also feel like I should highlight that there is no better time than now to get into the industry, because everything is locked down and shut down at the moment. So the first time that things are open back up, the industry is going to go absolutely mental. There is going to be so much work available and so many opportunities coming through. If you ask an engineer to shadow them just for a day or two, or follow them around, see what they're doing, they're getting so much work, they might say yes. Like, it's absolutely worthwhile preparing yourself for this boom that's about to come for the industry. Sorry, what were you going to say, Arson, before I interjected?
I can't remember.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just babbling on about the beauty of online training, and I was going to ask where you get your you can call it continuing professional development, but where do you go to seek out training now to improve and keep up to date with your knowledge and skills? Is it online? Is it mainly online? Do you do an online course? Do you do podcasts? What is it?
I do the videos mainly. Just watching things as they come. I subscribe to a load of things, as they come through. I have a list of things to catch up on, like I say, when I've got downtime on sessions. But if at some of the studios, there'll be a few rooms, and if there's a bit of downtime, then people will just kind of be knocking around the kitchen, and just for me in a working environment, just sitting and just starting a conversation with whoever's there. At Metropolis in particular, I've with the way things have gone with COVID, I've been taking assistant work again at Metropolis, but for me it's kind of given me a sense of retraining. So I get to sit in the room with some of their engineers of Grammy winners, so I get to sit in a room with these engineers and see how they work. Like George was saying about shadowing, it's kind of like, I'm just sort of sat there in the room doing the odd bit and watching things that they do that I could incorporate into my workflow. And if you've got the opportunity to go and sit in with someone who's doing that kind of thing day to day and see how they work and pick a few things up, then it's absolutely something that if you can ask, you go for it.
Absolutely.
I think also the tools to integrate with communities and industries around this topic have really come a long way. So like, I actually use Discord a lot to be part of a server that talks about audio engineering, video engineering. And if I come across something I've not seen before, I can ask them, and it's a server filled with thousands and thousands of people. More than likely, someone's going to get back to me. Or even without the Discord server kind of vibe to it, there's forums. I have people text me or message me just off the cuff, like, hey, what do you think to this idea? Would this work? It can be quite collaborative, and it's, again, like reaching out to that network. It is there to support you as well.
Awesome. Great, thank you. That's really great advice. I've got a couple of questions for Aaron, actually. I'm going to ask Aaron some questions now, because Kurt's had loads of questions. Aaron, have you got a favourite play? Mine's Waiting for Godot, says Anonymous. Have you got a favourite play?
A favourite play? Well, I'll tell you what, before I worked in theatre, I was adamant that I didn't like plays. I was like, plays are boring. There's absolutely no music, they're rubbish. But now, after a couple of years in the industry, there's some really fantastic ones that we've produced as well. I think my favourite it's a really tough decision between. We did a show called Memoirs of an Asian Football Casual, and one called My Beautiful Laundrette. We produced both of them in house, and they both sold really well. And they both follow sort of reasonably similar storylines. They're both about male black people in Leicester, and their story and how that came about. And yeah, they were both fantastic. I'd probably have to go with Laundrette just because I did more work on it. I built a lot of the practicals and things, but yeah, I think if you ever get the chance to see some produced work at Curve, absolutely give it a shot. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. I've got another question for you now. I've worked at Athena and Haymarket. How do I get my foot in the door at Curve?
Good question. Honestly, just turn up, say, I'd like to be on your casual list, because every theatre in this country has a casual pool. And there is a way to get on it. It just might be different in every theatre.
I'm glad you said turn up and ask about the casual list and not just turn up and just start working.
I mean, no one would probably say anything, but yeah, it's just turn up, ask for someone important, head of technical, head of lighting, whoever. But yeah, often or not, that'll at least get your name and your face on the radar of any theatre, whichever you go to. There's a couple of theatres that are a bit strange, like Nottingham Theatre Royal. It's owned by the council, so you have to go through the council to get on the casual list there, which is a bit funny. But yeah, so you'd have to do that the proper way. But most places are independent, and you can just rock up and say, hello, can I have a job?
Rock up then and ask for a technical tour. There.
Yeah.
Another one for Kurt. Any advice for someone wanting to become a mastering engineer? Is it a similar approach to entering the industry as a producer?
I'd say probably not easier, but a similar route. I'd just say if you can do mastering work initially for free or cheap, to build a show reel and have, a 2-minute reel of, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 things that you've done that sound great. Make it available to people, and just put yourself out there. Show what you can do, and then if you want to go into it in the industry, working with the labels and things, then send it to the labels, send it to mastering specific studios. So I know like Metropolis has its mastering side, there's Alchemy, that's a big mastering studio in London. Send it to those types of places, and I mean, fingers crossed you get a reply. But it's that thing again of send something every month. If you don't hear, then just keep going at it and don't feel disheartened. But yeah, keep building on that show reel.
Excellent. This is another one from Govinda. John's now shortening his name to G-Man. Kurt, what music distributor have you ended up using for releasing music?
I used Ditto when I was releasing music, but I haven't done anything as an artist for a long time, so I don't know the ins and outs of what's good now. But Ditto was my thing at the time.
Okay. Here's another question from, am I going to ask this question? Yes, G-Man, again, Govinda. Do you feel Confetti taught you enough about the business aspect for releasing music, e.g. about publishing? It's quite a loaded question. Cast your mind back in time.
I think every course I've done's had some sort of module that's catered towards publishing in some way. But again, like I was saying before, that idea of you learn more once you're actually in it.
Yeah.
Working with the labels and A&R and that side of things, and songwriters who work solely for royalties from publishing. I think I've learned a lot more. I thought I knew a lot, and now I work in it and talk to people daily. I've learned a lot more since I've been in the industry.
Yeah. I've got a question. I'm going to round things up fairly soon, but I just want to ask you all what your predictions are for the next 12 months coming out of lockdown restrictions, and particularly for new entrants and graduates into the industry. What do you think prospects look like for them? Tumbleweed blows through as everyone goes, I don't know.
Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, my Zoom just broke up.
Oh, sorry, it's just all gone a bit. Oh.
Sorry.
I think I just
my screen's
reiterate
just frozen.
what I said before is things are going to reopen in such a big way. Everyone's been sat at home for the best part of a year.
Yeah.
The first thing people are going to want to do, and the first thing I want to go and do, is go to a concert or a festival or go and listen to some music outside again.
Yeah.
So it's just going to explode. And that's the same for artists as well. Artists haven't performed in a venue or, as Kurt said, in a studio for a long time. The first thing they're going to want to do is going to be getting back to where they were before. So the opportunities are like nothing we've ever seen before. I think you can quite comfortably reach out to artists, reach out to companies, and you'll probably get a positive response as they pick up more and more work. Because I mean, I've already seen, talking to some of the hire companies who are looking to start reopening things, they're already seeing an increase in the number of gigs, bookings that they're getting.
Yeah.
So don't wait until the end of Industry Week. Start now.
Start now. Network. Get yourself out there. What about Aaron? What do you think? Have you got any predictions for the next 12 months?
It's difficult, really, because
it is.
Well, I'd hate to bring up a sad note, but unfortunately, a lot of my really good friends have been made redundant and are sort of in really bad places at the minute. Because, well, I mean, the events industry basically runs off freelancers, so it's difficult for everyone. But hopefully, like George says, I mean, I've been in staff meetings where we plan on, and every company in the events world plans on hitting the ground running as soon as those restrictions are lifted. No one's going to sit back and think, actually, we'll wait. We might not earn very much money here. We'll wait. It's all going to kick off, we think. So
I think it is as well, actually. I think it might be initially that it's, certainly for venues, there could be a mixture of socially distanced audience and live streaming ticketing options, so that it builds audience that way, builds audience and revenue. That's certainly what we did at Metronome. We've done that over the last few months. And then obviously, hopefully, some smaller scale festivals will start up with slightly smaller capacity audiences, socially distanced, as we gradually test the water and see that things are opening up. I agree. I think the time is now. The time is now to make those approaches. Kurt, what are your predictions?
I think, like I say, as soon as the restrictions start lifting studio-wise, and you can allow more people into a room, then I think, there's been plenty of time for people to sit around writing and, working out ideas. So there's going to be, hopefully, a lot of people recording again once things are back to normal and more of the studios can open. But live-wise, I think I've done a lot of live streams over the past few months, and I kind of hope that continues, because it keeps things fresh and exciting. But at the same time, it's going to be great, as soon as the venues can open, like you say, the timing, the small festivals and things, hopefully, as of summer and then onwards, we can start looking at a bit of a boom again. Because I mean, to be fair, however it goes, it's been so quiet the past few months that whatever happens in summer, it's going to feel like an explosion.
It's going to feel like an enormous party, even though it might be socially distanced. Yeah, I totally agree. Let's be positive about this. I've got one final question to round things up, because we're drawing rapidly to conclusion, sadly. But and this is a question I always ask every year. And actually, a student has asked it as well, in a fashion. It might have been G-Man, I'm not saying. But, all right, cast your mind back to your student self, knowing what you know now, the experiences that you've had in your careers to date. What's the one bit of advice you would give to a Confetti student today? Aaron?
I would say it's something that I think about all the time. It's okay not to know something. It's okay it's okay to ask how to do something, or tell someone that you don't know it, because I know, especially in the theatre industry, having a degree it's not frowned upon, but it's sometimes looked down upon, because a lot of people in the theatre industry haven't been to uni. They've come up through the ranks from the bottom, so they think, oh, these degree guys, they don't know what they're talking about. And then if you come in and act like you know everything, that's not going to help your position.
Just reinforces that suspicion, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you come in and you're just a nice person, you yourself, and you say, if someone asks you to do something, you say, oh, actually, I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? There's always enough time to be shown how to do something. Even if it's not the person who asked you to do this job, somebody will have the time.
So ask questions.
George, what about you? What's your bit of advice?
I'm going to say the same thing that I said in the gaming one, which is start talking to people, make connections, don't waste that opportunity. I mean, similarly, if you've not found myself on LinkedIn and Twitter already, you're wasting an opportunity.
Yeah.
Go out there and in fact, there's my LinkedIn. Find us, add us, talk to us, and do that with everyone else you can find in the industry as well. Because the sooner you start building your network, the sooner you start talking to people, the sooner you'll be able to hit the ground running when the industry booms.
Yeah, absolutely. Get networking, link in, not necessarily on LinkedIn. Other platforms are available, Twitter, etc., etc. Kurt, what about you? What's your bit of advice for students?
I would say make use of the facilities while you've got use.
Yeah.
I mean, learn the gear, learn outboard. Although it's not essential nowadays, it certainly helps. You know, if you're trying to get a job in the studio, if you know how to do certain things or you know routing, and it definitely gives you a bit of a step up. And Nottingham's got a great music scene, so use the artists around you and get people in and try stuff out and build that show reel before you leave. So you know you don't have to do the free and cheap jobs. You know, you can just sort of like hit the ground running, like you say.
Make the most of the kit while you can. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You can plus one. Yeah, of course you can plus one, Aaron.
Pick your tutor's brains until they collapse.
What, until the tutors physically collapse?
Yes. They are, especially at Confetti, very, very experienced people who have been in the industry. Leech information off them. And
parasitically, be annoying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep them dry for information. Yeah, it's
Definitely.
very good advice. Very good advice. Sadly, we're drawing to a close now. We've kind of run out of time. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this panel today. It's brilliant. I love doing them. It's always a pleasure to invite graduates back and hear your advice, which is so valuable. If we were in an auditorium and we could physically clap, I would clap. We would clap yourselves as well. We'll all have a little clap to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to all of the students that have attended and asked questions, particularly G-Man, Govinda, you've been amazing. Lots of great questions, and as all of our panelists have said, for God's sake, link in, connect, pick their brains. They're online, they're all there, they're all available in the online space to contact if you've got any other questions. So that's pretty much it from me and for the Do It For Real music panel for this year. Thank you so much. Thank you to Aaron, to George and to Kurt. If you could just stay on the line whilst we then clear the room and then we'll come back to you shortly. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.